everyone. Just brought the car out for a run. Like I say, just to keep the battery going. Just keeps getting drained with not getting the commute to work every day. I've driven up here to Headley on the Hill. I've been up here for a long time. Used to have some friends who lived up here. It's kind of significant for this week because there is a folk tale up here of a creature called the Headley Cow. From local folklore, certainly. In fact, Ian claims to have seen it one night when he was walking home from the Feathers in Headley drunk. I'm going to try and get him to tell the story. He sent it in a text, recorded himself. But I wasn't going to do this, but I think I'm going to actually tell the original folk tale while I'm here. So I'll just turn the camera around with a nice backdrop. Just one moment. There we go. Okay, so the story of the Headley Cow is that an old lady was walking home to home in Headley late one afternoon many years ago, and she found a black pot, like a black cauldron, in the middle of the road. And she stopped to have a look at it, and she thought, I might have a hole in it. She decided she'd take it home anyway. Took her shawl off, wrapped it round the pot, and before she started dragging it along, she had a look inside, and to her amazement it was full of gold. So she's dragging it along the road, and she gets so far and she decides to have a quick check what the of this pot. And she turns around and the pot's turned into a lump of silver. She's like, oh well, it doesn't matter, it'd be easier to get rid of than gold, but I'm sure it was gold before. She carries on dragging it. Gets a bit further along, turns around to have another check, make sure everything's alright. It's a lump of iron. Well, she shrugs her shoulders. Iron's easier to get shot of than silver or gold, and still make her quite a bit of money if she, and cut it up and sell it off in bits. And she's very nearly home, turns around one last time. It's just a big rock that she's dragging along. Well, she thinks, what does it matter? She can use that as a doorstop. Still better than nothing. She drags it to her home. She's just about to open the gate, turns around, unwraps her shawl, and all of a sudden, this lump of rock, grows 4 long lanky legs, a tail, has a long snout, big long floppy ears. It kicks up its long legs, and cackling like a schoolboy, big rock, which has suddenly turned into something quite different, trots off down the road. Well, thinks the old woman, how lucky have I been today? I've encountered the mythical Headley Cow. She goes inside, lights up the fire, sits down, thinks about what an extraordinary day she's had. There's the legend of the Headley Cow, one of the stories anyway. It's a strange, shape-shifting creature from round here. So that's for you there, Ian. I'm going to head back. Bonan's had a good enough run out. Bonan's me car, Bonan the Carbarian, as he's called. Dun dun dun! We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Mr. Ian Naggs has been kind enough to send in his account of when he encountered the Headley Cow, so you'll be able to see that on the screen, I hope, and I'll read it out as well. I was 10 or 11 years old and the proud owner of a 50cc Italjet motorbike. I was also fortunate enough to live in Headley on the Hill, my best friend living on the local farm. We often spent our days riding around my friend's farmland, away for hours at a time, having races, making jumps, and making different courses around the farm quarry. On the day in question, the usual rumble in my stomach told me it was time to head home for my tea. I had 2 routes home from the farm: push my motorbike from the farm to the other end of Headley along the road, or ride home via the fields, which meant going through about 5 or 6 gates. Riding home via the fields could be a little tedious by the time you stopped at each gate, opened it, pushed or rode the bike through, stopped and closed the gate behind you. I usually opted to push my bike home as it was a little quicker. Today, I decided I'd have a change and ride via the fields. Saying my farewells to my friend, I headed home. I hadn't noticed it before now, but a dense fog had settled after about a minute into my journey. The fog was thick and grey, and the temperature had dropped a little too.
I wasn't far from the farm and approaching the first gate when my motorbike suddenly stalled. Unusual for my sturdy bike, as I shuddered to a stop, I approached a very strange sight. What I'm about to describe sounds ridiculous. It always has done, and I always understand when people laugh. But what stood about 5 metres in front of me was a cow wearing jeans. I remember not being scared in the slightest. Sitting on my bike, I observed the creature before me. The cow element had accentuated features, almost like it was drawn. Its head was larger and it had horns, so it was probably a bull. It had a muscular torso disappearing into a pair of blue jeans. The torso did not have any arms. I was looking at the front profile of a cow or a bull with a muscular body wearing jeans. I remember thinking I had to take this all in. I was fascinated and quite calm about my situation, and we exchanged looks for about 7 or 8 seconds. Something brought me out of my stare, and I decided to move on. I looked down and pulled out my kickstart, ready to start my bike, and when I looked back up, the creature had started to disappear. It was like the fog was getting denser, until the point I could no longer see it. I remember feeling really calm, like this was an everyday occurrence, and nothing to worry about. My bike started fine, and I completed the rest of the slightly tedious ride. By the time I got home, the fog had cleared, almost like it had never been there. I didn't mention it to my parents. I thought I'd be laughed at. But I did mention it to my friend and his dad the next day. My friend's dad had an excellent sense of humour, and I knew that if I mentioned it, he'd probably have a laugh about it. But he would be laughing with me, not at me. I described what I saw the previous tea time, fully expecting to have my story debunked or explained away. My friend and his dad described the legend of the Headley Cow, a shape-shifting trickster. He said I was lucky to see it, as not many people did. He said the cow was responsible for many strange goings-on in the area, and the legend of it was well known. I was surprised how I was not made fun of, and how my story was accepted. Well, Ian, thank you very much for that. I know you said people probably wouldn't be interested, but I certainly think there will be. I certainly am. Sorry, I thought you were a lot older when it happened. I thought you were on your way back from the pub. So apologies for that. But what's interesting is that a lot of the time when people encounter fey creatures, they do remain very, very calm, no matter how weird the situation is. The fog is certainly indicative of a few encounters with fey creatures as well. So again, thank you very much for that. It's a great story. I think it fits in well with this. I hope you and your family are keeping safe and well during this time, and I hope you're doing well. Thank you once again. And now we shall get back to what happened. Did I drop the phone or not?
I'm back in the car now. I didn't drop my phone. I managed to catch it. I've dropped it once already before. It's already got a massive crack in the screen. So yes, that was the story of the Headley Cow. And if you didn't catch at the end, my car is called Bonin the Carbarian. And like I say, that story was for Ian Nags. Next story up is Meg of Meldon. I make a ridiculous claim that Barter Books is in Morpeth. Barter Books isn't in Morpeth. It's of course in Alnwick. And another thing is, I'm driving around to these places, come up to Headley, and it is literally just so that the car battery doesn't die. Don't come to these places at the moment. By all means, visit them afterwards. Northumberland is incredibly beautiful, but at the moment, stay home, stay safe, enjoy the stories. Have a great week, everyone, and enjoy the next one. I'll see you later. I'm going to go home, I'm going to get me dinner. I'm pretty hungry now. Bye. To the north of here, not quite far north as Bamborough, lies Morpeth, renowned for the excellent Barter Books. Just to the west of Morpeth, the small parish of Meldon. And in Meldon lived a woman named Margaret Selby. She was very rich, very wealthy, but not very generous with her wealth. And not very well liked either. It was rumoured she was a witch. She earned the moniker of Meg of Meldon. When she eventually passed away, her rumoured great fortune was nowhere to be found. Now it was said that a poor young farmer, who also lived in Meldon, began having the strangest dreams. He dreamt that if he went to Meldon Bridge at midnight, he'd meet a cloaked stranger who would lead him to Meg of Meldon's lost treasure. Well, he didn't really have much to lose. And so, feeling quite foolish, he set out one night and waited at Meldon Bridge. He hadn't told anyone else. He didn't think anyone would believe him. But maybe this was a way to end those dreams. To his surprise, to his horror, at midnight, a cloaked figure did appear. He beckoned to the farmer. Well, he wanted to run. But curiosity overcame fear. And so he followed the cloaked stranger, who led him to a well, and indicated that he should help put the bucket down the well. So the young farmer and the cloaked stranger worked the rope, lowered the bucket, then began to pull it back up. Oh, it was heavy, too heavy for it just to be water. Could it be? Could it be? The young farmer's face lit up, and he looked at his companion, and he beamed. It must be Meg's fortune. Ha! We've got her! We've got her at last, the miserable old crone! But at that moment, the stranger's hood fell back, and there was the cruel, wrinkled, grinning face, Margaret Selby, Meg of Meldon herself. The farmer cried out in terror, let go of the rope, and ran. He ran home and he ran back to bed. Well, he was never troubled by any dreams again. But he could never find the well again. And he certainly never told anyone that what had happened. Who would believe him anyway? As far as I know to this day, Meg's fortune has still not been found.